I invite Jack to join our panellists, who I'm going to invite to come up here to talk about their experiences as well. Thank you. Neil Thomas, Associate Professor of Psychology at Swinburne University. Neil, would you like to join us, please? Ben Matthews, Wellways Peer Services Manager, who trains people to tell their stories in a way that is transformative for themselves and others. And Laura Collister, Wellways Director of Mental Health Services, Research and Development. Now, lady and gentlemen, not ladies, lady and gentlemen. Uncle Jack Charles has been immensely generous tonight, and he's given over some of his additional time to you. So you have more than 2 minutes each.
There you go.
Gee, thanks, Uncle Jack.
Father time.
Neil, would you like to present to the group?
Sure. So, I mean, I suppose we've got this theme about sharing stories, and my interest in this, I think my background's been as I trained as a clinical psychologist, so that is perhaps more the artistry of asking questions rather than sharing stories. But as I've got involved in research, trying to work out how can we better reach people, help people, particularly in groups with more severe mental health problems, that it's been, I suppose, we've seen a lot of growth of various ways in which lived experience can be used. So in terms of peer support groups, such as My Recovery, which Wellways runs, in terms of people standing up and speaking, like Uncle Jack has, and we've been interested in digital mediums like the internet as well, where people can hear from other people and connect with other people. So in doing research on that, one of the things that we hear again and again from people is that there's something different that you get from hearing people with lived experience talking about what they have been through and how they've navigated recovery, that people can't get necessarily from a non-peer practitioner or professional. In particular, people talk about feeling like they're not alone with their experiences. Is something we hear again and again in the research that we do, that other people have talked about around the world as well. And that can be from different things. Hearing people standing up and talking can give that sense, but with peer support groups, people can get a real strong sense of community that they may be feeling that can be missing otherwise. The other thing that we hear people talk about is feeling inspired, and something we've taken from research that we've done is that it's not merely a transient feeling of hope, but that people can feel inspired to actually make changes that translate into actions about what they can do. So we've become interested in, as I said, in looking at digital mediums, and we've been interested in not just the internet as being a way of accessing things, but also being able to present material, like we can film people talking about their experiences and use that as a tool for non-peer professionals to have peer stories in the room with them, like on a tablet computer. And what we found there is that non-peer workers can find this being a really useful tool as well, to have the voice of lived experience as something as part of their work. So it can get, what we hear from consumers as well is people can have deeper conversations about what really matters to them. They said the time spent effectively. So we think we've got something which is really quite important here about the voice of people that have experienced those problems being really embedded in all areas of practice.
Thank you, Neil. Ben Matthews. Ben, would you like to present some of your thoughts and experiences, please?
Thank you, Liz. Also, thank you, Uncle Jack. Great yarn.
Okay.
I actually started my career in this sector 7 years ago as a volunteer storyteller, sharing my lived experience. Since then, I've probably done well over 2,500 people have shared my experience with me. It's always a great gift to be able to share one's lived experience. At Wellways, we have a huge emphasis on lived experience driving the way we work with people, driving our culture, driving our programs, and it works. As Neil said, the reality is that sitting down with a worker or sitting down with a friend that has had a similar experience, a peer as we call it, is transformative. One of the great privileges I have is when I do train people to share their lived experience. We spend 5 days working with people to prepare a 20-minute presentation. And it's a process where people really reach into their souls to find something that they want to give to someone else. And when that happens, as the person that I don't even call it training, because the people that are there, they do all the work. I'm just sort of like a traffic cop, just I wouldn't even go as far, a bit like a conductor almost in some ways, where you're just bringing about a process where people unlock those stories. Quite often, those stories can be upsetting for them at some stage in that process. And that's the beautiful part. That's the beautiful part. We talk sometimes, people think about risk being an issue with people sharing their lived experience. I find this concept frustrating, the notion that people with mental health issues, mental illness, mental health problems, whatever you want to call it, are somehow vulnerable. It's risk parachuting, it's risky skydiving, it's risky getting pregnant. God's sake, people with experience mental illness issues, whatever you call it, as I said, they're pretty resilient. They're there. They're still alive, for God's sake. The biggest risk is that you come out of a presentation just feeling so awesome. I've done a lot of presentations in school groups to young people, and it's very interesting how often, when asked at the end, anything you'd like to say, tell me, how many of the kids will go, "You just seem like a really normal person." And that's what you want to hear. That's the good stuff, because in a community where, and I will have a little sling at Mental Health Week, in that we have celebrations of, well, not celebrations, but things like breast cancer awareness and that sort of thing, which are there to support ongoing research and things like that. But Mental Health Week says a lot about the fact that we have a week that is there to really shine a light on the fact that we're not upholding people's human rights, that we still have a world where there is stigma, that we have well over 100 people in Wellways at the moment that go out and share their lived experience because of the stigma, because of social exclusion. And for me, there's something, I do still find there's something personally for me unpalatable about Mental Health Day and Mental Health Week. Not wanting to be a negative Nelly on it, there's a lot of great stuff. It is important, but I think it's also important to recognise that one of the big reasons we have mental health is we're not recognising and giving people their basic human rights. I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Ben. Well, Laura, what have you got to say?
Well, Thank you to Uncle Jack and Ben and Neil. I think I wanted to reflect on what lived experience means to us as an organisation, and then some of the challenges we face going forward. I think Ben and Uncle Jack have demonstrated the power of sharing stories in changing community attitudes and in creating more welcoming spaces for people in the community. The research tells us, and I know personally, when people share their lived experience, that the audience does make the comment, gee, that person's normal. They're just like you and me. And that means we can connect with that story, and that can create some meaningful change. And all those people that you train, Ben, go out to tell their story with an intentional, with an intent from our perspective as an organisation to change community attitudes and address some of the stigma that you were talking about. I know we also have a commitment to the peer workforce that works directly with individuals in our programs. Referring to the research that Neil has spoken about, and what we know also is that intentional use of the peer experience can create real change and really facilitate and help somebody move in whatever space they are. We know that people can feel very hopeless and stuck in their experience of mental ill health and very alone in their experience. And connecting with a peer can be exceptionally powerful in changing that person's experience and moving them from a stuck, hopeless place to something where they can see a possibility which enables some movement to occur. But I also want to talk about the third element in our organisation, and that is how embracing a peer workforce and valuing lived experiences actually alters the organisation. It changes the way we, and me personally who trained as a professional, sees the world and how we value that expertise that people bring in. I think all our workers in our organisation are better workers for having somebody with a lived experience sitting alongside them in an equal work capacity. Much better workers. And we strive to embed peer workers throughout our organisation because it is those people that keep us honest sometimes about the work we do. So I look at the three elements that are really important. Wellways is going through transformational change. We are moving into delivering programs through the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and we are constantly striving to create ways to keep this sort of work going. It's not easy when a lot of your funding is very much focused on a professional model of service delivery where I work with you as an individual, and yet you know that it's this work that surrounds the organisation where one's talking to the community. All the work that Ben described where we support people to tell their story is work that's so fundamentally important to our organisation to keep us doing good quality work, but also it's very powerful for the community and for the individuals. And we've been fortunate to get funding to deliver a whole lot of community education through the NDIA, which is great, but it's 12-month limited funding. So we're constantly striving for people to see the value of this work and to support what we're doing, because we know, because people tell us, it is probably the most valuable thing, or one of the most valuable things we offer. So I do see those three elements of this being fundamental to Wellways and Wellways going forward.
Thanks, Laura. I've just got a couple of questions, follow-up questions for each of you. And Ben, if I can start with you, please. There's a bit of a conversation about how should the stories be told? Is it a straight storytelling arrangement, or do you have a model and do you stick with the model and put everything in there? What's your thoughts on that?
Many thoughts on that. Our new Well Said program, we've basically started from the beginning, and we're working on a narrative process where the way the story's told is determined by the storyteller. We don't have a model of storytelling because everyone's story is different and the way they need to deliver that story is different, and that's where the authenticity comes in. So the notion of having a fixed model where you put, hi, I'm Ben, I have bipolar, this is what bipolar looks like, I get manic, I get depressed, blah, blah, blah. Tells you a bit of stuff. 15 years ago, mental health literacy was very low. Those sorts of processes were really valuable, and that's where a lot of storytelling, that's the space a lot of storytelling happened in those days. Mental health literacy's thankfully a lot better than it is now. So storytelling's moved to a place of an authentic reflection of where someone wants to share their story. But what's really important to remember is a person's story. I mentioned we'd say, look, if I was telling you a 20-minute story, the story is about getting to know the person, not the illness. The person is the person, and a story needs to say virtually nothing about mental illness to be an incredibly effective and valuable and authentic story. Me sitting here giving you 20 minutes about what it's... Oh, look, it'd be pretty funny if I told you about some of the manic stuff. But, you're not going to get much of it. But getting to know what makes that person tick, how they overcome those struggles, who they are now, where they change. Like I went through 10 years of fairly dark place, and I look back now and I was just a self-obsessed arsehole when I was younger, sort of thing. And the journey that I've gone through has enriched me, and being able to share that journey has enriched me. So those narratives have to be driven by the person that wants to tell the story. They have to decide. Their story could be just a day in the life of what their life looked like. It could be a week, it could be a year, it could be where they were, what they're doing now, what happened in the middle. It's about a person being able to unlock what they want. Yeah.
Fabulous reflection about where we started and what that literacy actually has meant, that it was a story about illness rather than personhood. So I think that's really useful to reflect on. Ben, thank you. Uncle Jack, what happens when people don't listen? How do you change that?
It's very frustrating. I have two nephews that are still dabbling at height of using my bathroom as their shooting gallery and that, Now, it's been a long time. And again, I get really pissed off at maybe I'm not working hard on them enough and that. And yet I can go and talk to somebody on the Smith Street strip and keep aware of what they're doing in their journey of jumping off the methadone and how you're feeling and all that kind of stuff, and talking about sleepless nights, how you're coping, sleepless nights, what do you do? You say, well, I'm on the computer and that, I can't sleep, I'm being rigid-edge. I don't want to regress, because it's a more difficult drug to jump off than heroin. Many heroin, methadone users have to use heroin to get off the methadone. That's insidious practice and that. So the point was that you just have to keep at them. I'm there every day. I ride my auxiliary-powered bike, at extreme pace, seniors pace, along the bike lanes and the shared footpaths into my community on a daily basis. I'm a right-hole gig, a nosy parker. I need to know what's happened in my community. And I see some of the people that are frustrated with themselves for not having taken the bull by the horn, when I'm expressing that they should, take themselves seriously, You know, use your indigenousness, young fellow. You know, it'll pull you through. It just doesn't work on everybody. But, you know, but I know it's working on some people because, you know, the basic concept is that real black fellas oughtn't to be shooting up this white powder. We somehow turn up being like white gangsters, behaving like white gangsters, and I tell them that, you know. And that, you know, and if somebody like myself, you know, gets them to, you know, is so forthright and like an uncle, you know, this is the area that many of our charges have been missing out on, nurturing from a young age. And in the old days, you know, you were with the women until you reached, 12, 14 or something, and then you were shunted off to Corranderk into the hills with the men to learn law and etc. And that, you know, so there's this missing element in that. So, you know, our communities ought to function, you know, as with the uncles and aunties as we used to have in our early development of our Aboriginal health services, housing, dental services and etc. But they've got more, you know, emphasis on corporate practices and that, and we have been noticing that there's been, you know, pulling up on the large amounts of money that have been embezzled from our community centres or our health services and etc. This is stopping, and that because, you know, as a community, you know, we're pointing the bone at this behaviour of these CEOs mismanaging Indigenous Fund, Health Services Fund. So, you know, even then, you know, I'm amazed at the people in the services. I'm there every day, you know, 5 days a week, sometimes on a Saturday morning, you know, at the Aboriginal Health Service on Nicholson Street, because I'm a gig and I need to know what's happening. Did so and so survive, or are they up here in St. V's, or in our hospice now? Are they being cared for and looked after? So, you know, I know that many people, you know, don't see me as a serious threat to their positions in life at the moment. And that, you know, so you know, I believe people will give us a fair hearing. We're emphasising the fact with the Archie Rhodes Foundation that we're actually enhancing the reach and lifting the reputation of the local liaison persons that work in the prison systems, in the youth detention centres and that, you know. We want to, you know, to be enablers for them to do some serious work on the minds of these young ones while they're trapped in a prison setting, and post-release too. That's very important, post-release. And our services it's beyond their ken or their ability to undertake this important measure of post-release servicing and care, nurturing.
I mean, what you've said there is so to the point. I guess being a leader, though, taking the role that you've taken, can at times be a pretty lonely space. How do you get the support, or how, you know, Ben, you know, how do you as leaders get the support that you need to fulfil those roles?
I'm not supported really, you know, in any way other than I have management now that looks after my calendar and my schedule, so, you know, and that's the support and etc. And I refer every request of me to do maybe the Goldfields Libraries talks and that, afternoons with Uncle Jack Charles at your local library and that. They're a hoot. And that, you know, they're calling me bums on seat Jack now, because people, like to hear what I'm saying, and that's, you know, that's the driving force behind me, and because we're in the business of trying to, you know, educate white Australia that this country can't really, you know, see themselves as equal to us unless they bled in the truth of each state's unique truth of you know, Aboriginal history right from the get-go. And you know, I now note that you know, governments of all persuasions are a little bit iffy. They were iffy about the word racism when I mentioned it on Q&A years ago, that Australia, in response to Adam Goods, they dragged me up to Q&A to talk, and they knew what they would get. I'm not like Foley, I'm not a socialist left or anything like this, but I have taken over his job as the mouth here in the south, and that in a large measure, and Foley's happy with that. He's very happy with that, I might add, But the point is that when you realise that the system isn't listening to you, you just got to find some way around them, and that. And if I can sit in a room with new taxi drivers that come into the country and tell them that we're not like your lowest caste in your own country. We want you to pick us up. We don't want to be racially vilified by your refusal to have us in your taxis and that. So this is a big bugbear, but I'm the one that's pointing the bone and waggling the finger at this insidious behaviour, and called a meeting with the 3 taxi delivery services, and the Ministry for Transport, Lackey, was there listening to it. And I proposed, this is the way to go about it, I put a proposition to it. My pitch was to these 3 gentlemen and the taxi associated mob that you allow an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander person come and deliver a cross-cultural awareness program to those that new taxi drivers that specifically come in from the subcontinent. They need to know that we do welcome them to country. There has been no Aboriginal organisation, to my certain knowledge, that has waggled, that has expressed sheer contempt for those that have sought sanctuary onto our country, onto our lands, across the nation.
Neil, what do you say to people who say that there's no place for sad stories?
No place for sad stories. I think this is when we've done work trying to sort of think about what types of lived experience material is going to be most useful for people. I think it's coming through quite clearly that people don't want to just be hearing positive stories about how things are really bad and then kind of I've ended up here and it's all been great. That people want to hear genuine stories, and that it's not all kind of like from one place to the next. Like people still go on and still experience struggles, and that's part of being human. So sad stories are part of it too. Absolutely.
Thank you. How does sharing a story, the work that you've done, what are the elements of sharing the story that works? Now, I'm happy to take that as a general comment, but it's taken us a while to get to this place, because I think that narrative strategies have been seen a bit as gossip until recent history. How do we explain, or what do we say that are the helping elements? Because there are still some of our colleagues who say, no, you can't have people who have a lived experience or who have a mental illness be part of a treatment team. What are the things that work?
I mean, it's a general comment. I might just sort of think that if we're thinking about lived experience, we're actually talking about something very broad. That one thing is about standing up and talking about a story, but many people maybe would use little bits of their personal experience in a one-to-one relationship, or would use, in a group environment where it's not necessarily one person as being the provider of the story. It's more of an interaction. So it strikes me as a multiplicity of different ways that there's about fit for what different people may get and what people may be able to provide.
For me, I often think that the power comes from when in the relationship there is a sense of commonality and connection that's formed. And I think Ben said it before, when you start to see the person you're in relationship with or that you're talking to actually as a human being, not as a person with a mental illness or a collection of symptoms or whatever, but here's another human being and there's some commonality in that human condition that we share. Sadness is a part of all our lives, struggle is a part of all our lives, but we all have areas of joy as well, aspirations, achievements. And for me, it's that commonality and that recognition of two human beings working together is where it happens. That's the most important thing, I think. And I guess from a professional perspective, we've all been taught to leave your human beingness at the door and to put on your professional persona and to do all the do all the measures, to answer the series of questions. And I think working with lived experience workers, that whole paradigm is absolutely challenged. I think that's a really good thing.
Thank you. I'd like to stop my interrogation of you now and ask the audience, have you got any burning questions that you would like to direct towards our panel here? We've got people with microphones, so please raise your hands if you've got some questions you would like to ask. Thank you, over here. If you wouldn't mind saying your names when you ask the questions, thank you.
Hi, my name's Ray Leshnowska. I'm a psychologist at the Victorian Aboriginal Health Service. Big fan of Uncle Jack. I've actually got a question today for Ben. Just interested in the work you do in supporting people to share their lived experience. Do you have any sort of guidelines or criteria about what stage people are at when you go through that process with them? What sort of stage in their journey or recovery?
It depends. With the current Well Said program through the NDIO funding, we actually go through a more formal expression of interest process. However, throughout the training, I've yet to find anyone that needs special treatment. That's again the thing. You're unlocking a lived experience. And, you know, in line with what Laura was sort of talking about, what we're doing in that space is creating trust. And it's a different form of trust. If you go to the doctor, you don't trust Ben the doctor, you trust the fact that he's been to medical school and knows something he's talking about. When peer workers work with participants, when I work with people training, when I work with staff and that sort of thing, you know, the key role, the key aspect to it is the relationship is based on trust, not on a professional qualification. And, you know, there's a term bandied around that, you know, peer workers and those chairlifted, we're experts at not being experts. Yeah.
Thank you, that's great, thanks.
Yes, there's another question here.
Thought I'd grab the microphone while I was here. My name's Tess and I'm on the Lived Experience Community Education program. My thinking might be a little bit fuzzy here, but I understand there was a new Mental Health Act Victorian that came in, I think, at the end of 2015 or somewhere, you know, not that long ago. And there was a huge focus in it on peer education, I thought, or peer workers. And the reason I'm raising that is that you were talking about the difficulty of fitting into funding criteria these days. I wonder whether you can comment on that.
Sure.
Thank
sure.
you.
I don't know whether you're talking about the Mental Health Act or you're talking about actually some standards that have come out and some...
I don't know.
Yeah,
Look, I
yeah.
was aware of something happening when I was working on the helpline, and it's a while ago.
Yeah. So there's a lot of national mental health standards, that sort of thing, that really says, you know what, peer workers should be part of a mental health system. Absolutely. In Victoria in particular, we're in a position where a lot of our funding is being what's called cashed out to the National Disability Insurance Scheme. So the sort of funding we've had that has enabled us to build up programs and to build teams that work together and can support peer workers and other people in teams is disappearing. And it's being, as I said, using that terrible term, cashed out to the National Disability Insurance Scheme. Now, the way one delivers services under the National Disability Insurance Scheme really challenges us to offer to people in the scheme trained peer workers to do this work. So,
Laura, can I just ask you...
Oh, can I add one thing? Ben often talks to me about the National Mental Health Standards and how on earth we're going to deliver them under the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and I think he's absolutely right. It is a real tension that we are holding as an organisation, and not just us as an organisation, but the mental health system is.
Laura, you understand when you're talking about the catalogue, if you like, of the services that are offered under NDIS. I'm not certain that our audience would quite understand what the issues are.
Okay, the catalogue. So if one gets individual support under the National Disability Insurance Scheme, you'll be funded to get individual support, which, you know, is great. And there's a list of types of support that you get funded to be delivered to you. Now those support items, if you like, are funded at such a low level that it is very difficult to put any trained workers in to deliver the majority of that support. So what we see and what Ben and I speak about is that we can get people with a lived experience to deliver those support items. We can get a whole lot of people to deliver those support items, but we can't get a trained people to deliver those support items. So the sort of training that our peer workers get through Ben's group is training to intentionally use their peer experience, as you know, in an intentional way that is designed to be very helpful. It's just not funded at a level that's going to enable us to deliver that to people. That's our challenge. And I mean, I could say that for non-lived experience workers too are in the same situation.
Is there one last burning question?
My name's Flick. I'm a little bit... Wow, I get to have a last question. So thank you all. This has been really grounding for me. I've had a really rough couple of days, and the energy you brought, Uncle Jack, thank you so much. I could actually breathe easier hearing your words. And I was thinking about a Robin Williams quote, that you're only given a little spark of madness, you mustn't lose it. And I feel like you were given a bigger share of madness than some of us, and I guess I just really honour that madness is generative and valuable, and I feel like you embody that in a way that reminds me of that. I feel like you're saying, I haven't lost my madness, and thank you for being who you are and sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you. It is actually people like yourself, and they're here in the audience, and this mob up here, that is a strengthening for me personally of my resolve to be continuing on this journey of being the black light of the future.
I don't know about you, But to me, this has been a fabulous night. Thanks, Uncle Jack. And I love the black light for the future. Sensational. To Frank Woodcock, I'd really like us to express our gratitude. He came into the then fellowship offices 19 years ago and said, my son died as a consequence of schizophrenia. I would like to honour his life whilst I'm still alive. If I donate some money over time, I don't want you to hoard it. I want you to spend it on doing something. What can you do? And so together we've created, as part of our charism, our organisational charism of advocacy, he has helped us create this form of advocacy over the many years that's driven much of the life and the activities that we now as Wellways have had the privilege of undertaking. I'd like to thank the Moon's a Balloon choir in preparation for your contributions we're all going to hear. So thank you very, very much. Please join us in the foyer to listen to their performance, which is always fantastic. Don't forget to explore the information, and I've only said it 4 times tonight. Please join us. Please become advocacy members with you. You know, putting your name down and helping us to say the things that you all believe in and that we talk with you is really important in the advocacy area. Otherwise, we're silenced. And silence does not make for good communities. We need you. The Well Said program is continuing. Please find a space if you're interested. And we have a range of advocacy programs that we'd love your help on. We wish to thank you very, very much for tonight. Can we thank our fantastic panellists? And thank you. Come and listen to some music, have a little to eat and something to drink. Thank you very, very much for joining us.